Hello tankers and tankettes, welcome to a pair of my replays. Today I'm looking at the tier 8 British heavy tank, the Caernarvon. Now there's a couple of reasons why I've picked out both these replays. They're actually both from 9.1, so a little while ago, you know, we're going back to last year here. And it's actually been at least that long since I owned the Caernarvon, so I'm going by memory here. It's one I'd like to have again, but I basically moved my crew up to the Conqueror and thence to the 215B. And although I will buy this again at some point, I'd like to have a decent crew for it first, because it's a nice tank. I actually quite liked it. Now, it's a very big change from the Black Prince that comes before it, which is, you know, the Super Churchill. And that kind of catches a lot of people out, because you get kind of used to that Churchill playstyle. You go from the Churchill 1, then you get to the Churchill 7, which is probably the most lackluster one of that line. And then you get to this, I almost said Super Pershing there, the Black Prince with its much better armour, although still not particularly great gun for its tier. It's alright, the 17-pounder on the Black Prince. And then you get to this thing, which is just a massive change, because suddenly most of your armour is gone and your gun gets a lot better. Now, the 20-pounder is what really defines this machine. The pen is as good as the BL9 that the IS3 has, but it's only got 250 average damage, so the damage counts a lot lower. And you also get this gun on the Tier 8 Centurion, as well as the AT-15. It's actually, I mean, it's not totally unfair to describe this vehicle as a slower Centurion. The trade-off is that you basically have the Conqueror hull, although there are some minor visual differences. But the upper front plate at Tier 8 is quite bouncy. Although this particular match, as you can see, was Tier 10. Definitely not favourable matchmaking at all. But on this machine, on this tier, the combination of the bouncy Centurion turret plus the bouncy upper front plate of the Conqueror, at least bouncy in terms of facing other Tier 8s, it's actually a not terribly armoured machine, but the sides and rear are very weak, the lower front plate is very weak, so it's not armour that you can particularly rely on. But the turret, the gun mantle especially, you can sometimes put that to very good use, and you combine that with the pretty good gun depression this thing gets. It's very nice. But yeah, the gun handling, I mean, I was talking about the 20-pounders. The gun handling on this, it's kind of from worst to best. It goes Centurion, Caernarvon, and then the AT-15. The AT-15 obviously gets the rate of fire, it gets the handling, because it doesn't have a turret. This thing, well, it's slower than the Centurion, but you actually get, well, it's actually a different version of the 20-pounder. The Centurion has the 20-pounder A barrel, and this has the 20-pounder B barrel. They are functionally the same, but this has got all the better soft stats, so the reticle bloom is better, the aim time is much better, the rate of fire is better. I also reload, but that would have been correct. Why did I correct myself for a thing where I don't know? Shut up, brain. So yeah, it is a very good gun for making kind of snapshots, for popping out, putting a shot in someone's face or whatever, and pulling back again. And although it's not the fastest machine, although it is kind of more of a support heavy than a frontline heavy, I still really liked it because it's just got a really nice combination of qualities. But I think because it's such a big step change from the Black Prince, the differences can catch people out. So on this particular match, anyway, enough about the actual tank. I mean, the person asked me to talk about it a bit, and I will come back to it eventually. I'll dip in and out of... I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. But the match at hand, what actually was happening, what we're watching right now. Well, we won this side, they won that side, basically, as you can see. And we took out some fairly dangerous units on this side. So the only Tier 10 they have left now is a Death Star. But we will see more of him, definitely. Now, I know there was a T-32 and a Rheinmetall down here, and I possibly foolishly decided to push around on my own, because if I ran into both of them, that would have been bad news. but it looks like it's just the T32 that I run into. And this is interesting because you think of tier 8 and you think of hull down, you think of the T32 and the T34, but actually the Caernarvon's pretty good at it as well, and the Centurion also, but the Centurion has a weaker upper front plate. And there are a lot of scenarios where, this one for instance, with my upper front plate showing, he would have probably paid me a lot more in Centurion. So it's always worth angling a Caernarvon in this kind of encounter. And there we go, someone else taking advantage of the distraction to come around and shoot him, but that's fine. That was 900 damage for me. But the angling matters, but it's one of the things it suffers from is a fairly weak ammo rack, and you will find that with the Conqueror as well. So yeah, it's preferable not to get shot in the hull if you can help it, but if you are in an engagement where it looks like you're going to be, then yes, angle, because there are a lot of times when it will help. So I managed to track that Rhinotaur. Unfortunately, nobody shoots him while he's tracked. Get another shot in, but it doesn't kill him. I could have loaded a Hesh shell there, but it probably would have been, at that angle, I'm not convinced it would have penned. So I went for the safe bet. I went for just the normal AP of this thing. We have decisively won at this point. I mean, 12-8. It looks like it's fairly comfortable. We know the Death Star was. The E75 and the T30 were approaching our cap. But we've got, what, 3 tanks shooting from the hill. We've got the 2 waffly 100s and a KV4 near our cap. So we should have this fairly easily. Some games, it's like, you think, okay, half our team's left. They've got 3 tanks left. Oh, it's fine, it's fine. And then somehow they, they're just the last couple of tanks, and sometimes you can be on a team it happens to as well, the last couple of tanks go down swinging very, very hard indeed, and suddenly it doesn't seem quite so certain. That's sort of what happened in this one, kind of, not really. But anyway, I've got that T30's attention, he's still looking at me, I'm unwilling to take the hit as of yet, and I think this was a mistake actually. I think I should have taken the hit from the T30, because then me and this KV4 could have worked him over, and we both would have been alive, because I've got the hit points to take a hit. But as it is, that KV4 has just died, and oh, missed that shot. I managed to get another shot in myself, but we could have killed him by now. If I'd just taken the hit, we could have easily killed him. So I don't know why I didn't do that, but anyway, that was by far the more selfish play that I made there, and it cost the KV4 his tank. I possibly wouldn't do that these days, unless I was just not particularly thinking about it. I don't think it was on purpose that I let the KV4 die. Anyway, the T30 was not expecting me to come round behind him. And this thing, I mean, it's not like the Centurion's fast, but this is slower. But it's still not a terribly, like, compared to the Black Prince, it's still a really big step up. In terms of how well you move around the battlefield. So maybe it's just the fact that it does come from the Black Prince, you suddenly feel a lot faster. I don't know. The actual top speed's not that much lower than the Centurion, but the power to weight ratio is, so you feel that a bit as well. But anyway, I did take the hit there. So I took the hit anyway. I might as well have taken the hit earlier and saved our KV4, but who knows. Meanwhile, the Waffle has managed to kill pretty much everything that's come at him. The T57 Heavy has finally come down and closed the distance, but the problem is we're all... did I say Waffle Death Star? I know what I mean. We're all easily one-shots. Like, even if I hadn't taken the T30 hit, I would have been an easy one-shot for that 183. I think 9.1, I think that was before the Hesh nerf for the Death Star. I'm not sure. I can't actually remember. But anyway, it was one of those scenarios where despite being vastly outnumbered, yeah, he managed to stay alive long enough to go through that long reload and take out those tanks. So we're now 3 versus 1. Anyway, I was thinking I'll come up behind him, but he flubbed his last shot. The T57 Heavy was able to finish him off, and there we go. So it wasn't that kind of an exciting, rip-roaring, action-packed match, although the next replay will be a little more action-packed. But that's kind of the nature of the Caernarvon. It's more of a support heavy, and especially like that matchmaking tier 10. You don't want to be on the front lines. But nonetheless, I was able to preserve my hit points to use at those crucial moments, and I actually walked away with top score on that team. Not top damage, nothing close to top damage, but 3,000 damage in a tier 8 heavy. That was actually, what, 3rd, 4th place on our team damage-wise. I beat some of the tier 10s. So if you can stay alive to keep that gun working, the 20-pounder is such a nice gun. It's such a nice gun. And it makes it all the more inexplicable that, you know, the Challenger, and I am going to take every opportunity to pick on the Challenger because it's terrible, the Challenger doesn't get that gun. Because the interesting thing about the 20-pounder, and I think I'm right in saying this, I think I'm remembering correctly, is that it was basically designed so that any tank that could have the 17-pounder mounted in it could have the 20-pounder mounted in it. But yes, there's a couple of machines where they could, in theory, have 20-pounders, but for some reason Wargaming have decided not to give them the 20-pounders at all. So, yeah, that was more of a kind of it was a good match, but it was more of a standard match, I almost want to say. It was just, it ended up having a good result, damage and score-wise. The next match, on the other hand, well, that's going to be something rather different. So here we are, match number 2, and this time I'm top tier, which is rather nice. There's also artillery, which is a bit less nice, but Fjords is at least a map where there are relatively large areas of arty-safe cover, basically. So it's pretty good matchmaking, but there's the question about where to go. Initially, I think maybe I'm going to go north, but I see that the tanks that are going south, well, it's a scout. A top tier heavy, okay, but and then a tier 6 heavy, the KV-1S, the old KV-1S. So a pretty big gun, you know. It's a gun to make the enemy tier 8s have pause for thought, but still, just on numbers alone, I thought, okay, we'll go south. I'll trust that the team will do their stuff in the north with the numbers that they've got, and that we can hold the south for long enough. Now that's the enemy top tier FCM. They've also got a Tiger 2 around somewhere. Let's hope we don't bump into him. The Rheinmetall's unlikely to be on the front lines, but the Yak Tiger 8.8, well, that's anyone's guess. As for the rest of the enemy team, well, it's a kind of a mix of heavies and tank destroyers. There aren't really many mediums on either team. I think we've got, yeah, we've got a T-34-85, and he might actually be the only medium tank. Yes, he is. So, yeah, it's slightly odd matchmaking, but good, though. I mean, this is, for this gun, you really can't ask for better than this. So, we can see a little bit more of what's here, and they do have the numbers, but this is actually a good position for me. And this is the reason why I saved this replay, is that you're going to get to see some hull-down action. Now, I mentioned in the previous one where I came up against the T-32, I was kind of hull down against him. I was partially hull down. Well, on this one, I'm able to properly go fully hull down. And although this is not the very best position, you can see that I'm struggling to get the gun down far enough here. You can nonetheless, if enemies come forward to you know, if they come far forward enough, you can get shots on them. So there's my first hit into that souffle. Get another one. And you'll see how many shots I bounce on. This is actually quite a short batch, but it's, yeah, quite a decent amount of potential damage, all things considered. So the KV-1S and the IS-3 have both taken a couple of hits already, and they definitely have the numbers advantage here. Like, we are relying on our team to really use their numbers advantage where they are, and win the north side of the map, basically. Prevent the enemy team from coming through the middle. And it looks like there are a couple of tanks on the FG line. So really the only danger is here that our teammates let enemy tanks come round behind us. Yeah, well, I did say in the last one, you know, just relying on random teammates. And, yeah, they slightly let us down in this one. Now, the VK goes back to kind of spot, but he's never going to prevent them to actually... I think I hit the KV-1S's gun there. He's never actually going to prevent them from kind of coming around. Although, if he gets a hit into the Rheinmetall's gun shield with the derp gun, you know, you can do a decent amount of damage, but it's still like 3 or 4 shots to kill a Rheinmetall. And I'm aware of this at this point, because... like, I'm just working this position, and I'm trying to keep my hit points, but you can see I'm pinging the minimap. Like, I'm fully aware of the fact that we might be, and it's the enemy Tiger 2's there as well, we might be about to get a bunch of tanks in the back, and that would be bad. And our team that have, like, they seem to be struggling, to be honest, on the north side of the map. They have definitely got the superior numbers. but they're not really taking advantage of that. And I see that a lot, that you might have a team that's got superior numbers on one particular location. But if you don't take advantage of that fact, then you might lose another bit of the map that's crucial, all the while you're just kind of sitting there. So, as it turns out, only the Rheinmetall came around. Donked his first shot into the ground. There we go, Hesh shell into the gun shield. But the other two tanks, well, I think they actually managed to kill the Tiger too. But the IS, as you can tell, went for our cap. Meanwhile, that's what, 4 tanks versus a KV-2 at this point. They're making a bit of a meal of it. The IS-3 has died in the meantime, and I can turn my attention back. Now, fortunately, they didn't really... Like, they themselves, the enemy team that were on this corner, were still... I think it was in part testament to how well our IS-3 and KV-1S, like, even if they weren't... I can't remember offhand what their damage scores were, but they were keeping those guys from coming around. And it wasn't the fact that we had the numbers, it was just not... I mean, you get so many scenarios like this where you'll have the outnumbered side, they just completely back off. And at that point, it's usually game over, because if you see somebody backing off like that, 9 times out of 10, it's not a trap, it's that they don't have the numbers, and... Oh, bye-bye KV-1S, burned out unfortunately. It's that they are feeling very unconfident, very unsupported, and they want to try and pull back to more defensible terrain, at which point that's a good point to attack them. Very, very occasionally you'll see unexpected reinforcements, but in this case, no, they could have pushed this corner, they could have taken this corner. And as it is, well, we're now down to me in this FCM, and I'm probably going to get to kill him. Now, the long 90mm gun actually is not too dissimilar from the 20-pounder, although I would say the 20-pounder is the superior gun, definitely. But, yeah, another 3,000 damage game, and another game where there was a bit more derpiness on our team this time, but the team as a whole, I would still say, played fairly well, and I was able to use that nice Centurion turret and use the fact that I had good matchmaking to actually get quite a nice result, as you're going to see in a moment. Now, we're down to, that was one arty that's just died, and there goes the Lorraine. So, they did all push around eventually, and, you know, people were more or less paying attention to what was going on, so it worked out in the end. So, as you can see, that was a high caliber steel wall and a Spartan, and most of the shots, again, actually managed to hit. Like, my accuracy in the last battle was pretty good as well. Again, over 3,000 damage. That was a daily, so it was a pretty nice daily, as you can see. And again, top of the team. And yeah, that's a less common scenario in the Caernarvon, but it can happen. And the other thing that goes well with the fact that it has a very bouncy turret and pretty good gun depression is that it's also got a fairly decent view range. Although I can't remember offhand, it was 400 meters. I can't remember if that got nerfed. But, you know, it's a heavy tank that it's worth sticking optics on. It probably still is. Like, it might have dropped to 380 or something. But, yeah, I like the Caernarvon, and I want to rebuy the Caernarvon at some point. But as I said earlier, I'm just hanging on to have a good crew for it, which will probably be my current British artillery crew, because they've got a decent amount of experience on now, having gone all the way up to tier 9. But I'm still hanging on to my British artillery just for the time being, for the personal missions, basically, because some of the scouting missions still require... I'm not sure, actually. I'll have to check that out. I might actually be able to sell my British arty now. I might not have to keep it anymore. But yeah, the Caernarvon itself, it's a pretty nice machine. If you struggled with the previous 3, the Caernarvon is a really nice step change. To be honest, I liked the Caernarvon more than the Conqueror, although the 215B it's like the Conqueror done right. I mean, the gun handling is very, very good, and the turret is finally worth the down, whereas the Conqueror's turret is kind of deceptive. It looks very sloped, it looks pretty good, but it is actually pretty damn weak. So the Conqueror, I mean, again, it's that support-heavy playstyle with a very good gun and a good rate of fire. The British tanks generally are about weight of fire rather than the kind of the one-hit wonders that you see on the Russian side. Although, of course, the Death Star, the 183, and the new FE 4005 are pretty big exceptions to that. So, If you enjoyed this pair of replays, which I'm hoping are going to be 1080, we'll see, you can leave any comments below. You can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.